So on this episode on All Things LOCS, we're going to be talking about different things that you can do coming up here on 2026 to grow your clinic. The thing is that people think it is sharpening up on insurance, it's talent acquisition, it's all these other things. The reality is the number one thing that's going to make the biggest change for you in 2026 is something entirely different. And we're just going to jump right into it. Before we get into systems, Dan, I have a question for you. What mindset does a clinic owner need to have before they're even ready to grow their company or seek help or get a consultant?
All right, so I like that question a lot, and I'm going to do a two-parter there. Number one, I think it's really just important for people to understand what mindset actually means, right? Because you see it a lot on social media where you just got to fix your mindset. And I'm always reading those that kind of comments or posting where it's just, does anybody understand what that actually entails, right? So first and foremost, it's just knowing that how do we see the world? You know, what are the stories and beliefs that we've created for ourselves or tell ourselves every day that more or less drive how we act. So when we think about running a practice or a healthcare organization, the way we look at certain situations is going to be everything when it comes to understanding what do we need to improve and how do we go about improving it. So, you know, we talk a lot about this where business owners tend to want to focus exclusively on tactics, like give me the next strategy or the next thing that's going to help me get to the next level. And then their head is all screwed up in the sense of I have poor belief structures. I don't think I deserve success. So when we're working with people, the most important thing to understand is it starts with the person at the top. And that's where a lot of business owners, that's one belief structure that a lot of us get wrong, is that we think it's everybody else's fault that we're not where we exactly want to be. So it's my staff. It's a big one for healthcare it's the insurance company's fault. It's the government regulation that I can't, open such and such because I'm a medical doctor. So it's getting your head wrapped around the fact of what are the things that are in my business that I can actually focus on and improve and not worry about this shit really that I have no control over. So that's why systems are great. And we're going to talk about that a lot, but ultimately it's the mindset that is I'm the problem. Like there's a reason I wrote a book called that, but there's a reason I called it that was because if you're owning a clinic or running a clinic, you are setting the tone as the person in charge, as the leader. So get your headset straight. Understand that your leadership within yourself needs to be fixed first before any system can make any kind of improvement.
What kind of like if we were to simmer that down into like a handful of words as far as like what mindset do they need to come up with? Because we know like what they're trying to avoid, what mindset is, but simply put, what do they need to have?
Ultimately, it comes down to, I'd say a few things. Number one is you have to be optimistic. And there is, and I'd be curious to know your opinion on this, but for me, I feel there's a major difference between being optimistic and positive, right? So positive for me is just like, yeah, everything's great, even though maybe shit's falling apart in front of you. And you're not being realistic. Optimistic is, all right, we can see things for the way they are, but we're still confident that we're going to come out on top of this. And then the other aspect, too, is going to be, am I keeping myself accountable? And that's one hallmark of anybody who's running a business, owning a business, is do I take responsibility for my own actions, or do I just want to see that from everybody that works for me, and then I can kind of do whatever the hell I want to do?
Yeah, those are both really, really good. One of them for me is like when someone kind of has more of a hat in hand approach. Like when someone has like, like I really, really need help. I've tried everything. There's almost a submission to you. And I don't mean that in a, in like any type of negative way, but it just means like I have exhausted all options. I've tried a lot of things. I'm at my wit's end. And when someone is kind of like that, the buy-in that they have is significantly higher, and there's more of that transference of power that ends up happening. And I think sprinkle in a little bit of humility. They're humble enough. I think humility is a big one. So whether a business is, really successful, if the CEO or the leaders have a level of humility, I think we're able to really do some amazing stuff with them.
Yeah. I will add to that because then you do have those business owners or people in general who just say, I've tried everything. Like I've literally done everything. And then you sit down with them like, all right, run me through everything you've done. And they've done two things.
Yeah.
Right. But they're like, oh, it's over for me. There's no hope. So it's just being able to, again, like that humility aspect of, all right, I've tried what I can think of, but I'm open to other people giving me some ideas that I probably haven't thought of at this point.
So to kind of layer that a little bit, so there is a mindset that people should come in with coaching. It's like with all that, but emotionally maybe they're not ready to hear the truth about their business. When you kind of hear that question, like, why do you think so many clinic owners, like, they want to grow? Maybe they have that mindset, but maybe emotionally they're not there either, because there's a little bit of a difference.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It is. Most people don't want to hear the truth about the situation that they're in with regards to the fact that they caused a lot of the issues that they have, right? So I look at it like treating a patient. Your patient comes in, and I'll talk about something orthopedically speaking, which is a lot easier. They come in and maybe they're overweight and they have chronic knee pain. They're looking for every reason other than their weight to explain why they have pain, right? So they don't want to hear, well, I caused it, because then if they, and it's just something that a lot of us really don't deal with. And it's the same thing for a lot of clinic owners. If they're struggling, a lot of them out there, it's just very human nature to not want to admit, I actually caused this and I could have done better. Even if there is that aspect, and you talk a lot about this, which I appreciate, that ignorance aspect of, I just didn't know, like you don't know what you don't know, but then people just, we want to think that we know everything. And as an owner, I think a lot of us really look at situations like, if I don't have the answers for everything, how can I expect everybody beneath me to really maybe respect me, or to, they think now I don't have the answer, so what does that mean of me? So I think that's a huge aspect of it. And really, even kind of looking at the aspect of the mindset is, even for the clinics that are doing great, I think what a lot of people get tripped up is, your goal should be, how do we just make things better and better and better, right? It's not a matter of, hey, I'm even failing. Just for some people who are doing great, it's how do I optimize? How do I make it more efficient? How do I, do more with less, so to speak? So it's just that concept of understanding that we're not perfect, and you need outside help to see exactly what's going on around you, because ultimately a lot of business owners, especially in healthcare, they usually get wrapped up so much in the day-to-day of the business, it's hard to just see the bigger picture.
Absolutely. You mentioned a little bit earlier that a lot of owners, they kind of want tactics. They want but what do we do here? But it feels like some of them just don't want accountability along those tactics. So why is accountability for us the first prerequisite before we talk software or KPIs or structure?
Yeah, I mean, we've run into that issue before, but if you can't take accountability, I really look at it as two things. If you can't take accountability as the person who is in charge, what gives you the right to demand accountability from the people that are working with you, right? It's bullcrap to say, I want my employees to do this, but then I don't want to do that. So you're creating a huge disconnect. And we talk a lot on the show and in our business about company culture. That's one of the ways to freaking either destroy or never establish a great company culture, is to say one thing for everybody else and then hold yourself to a standard that's actually less than what you're telling employees to do. So it's that. And then realistically, it's just harder. And people want to go with what's easier. So I can easily take a framework or a strategy and just put it in place and get to work, right? It's like, again, like a patient says, hey, I could just give me a needle. It's a lot easier versus, well, you actually need to go on a huge freaking diet, change your lifestyle, start exercising, all these things to actually create long-term changes. And most of them are like, I don't want to do that. That's just going to take too long. It's going to be too hard for me to do that.
For the people that are watching, accountability can mean a couple different things, right? When you use the word accountability, how do you mean it in kind of the business sense? When you're working with somebody and you're telling them, we need your accountability to be on another level for this to work.
You need to be responsible for your actions. That's really what it comes down to. Whether you knew something, you did it by accident, you did it on purpose. If you're not taking responsibility for what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, what are we supposed to do, right? Because then there is, when you don't take accountability for yourself, essentially what we're doing is we're giving our own power or our own emotions, we're giving that control to something else. And then basically what we're saying is, I can't fix anything else. And when you take responsibility for yourself, you now say, all right, I did this, I can be the one to fix it now. And that's where a lot of people fall short when I want to blame everybody else. you're actually creating a system where you can't fix it.
You know, we recently had an experience where we had a partner, and so by partner I mean like, you know, someone coming to us and they were a partner of their own, you know, clinic, and they were kind of, I would describe them as like, we would want to work with this person. They're very accountable. They were very open with their problems, how it's been affecting them professionally, personally with the clinic. They were very transparent. So they just exuded all the things. We're like, yes, like they're just,
ideal person. Yeah.
We're getting a really clear picture of what's going on. And then what ended up happening was that we got set up on a call for this clinic, and their partner was on the other line. And their partner it was almost like they were oblivious. They had such a poor attitude. They got on the call and they were just like, all right, I just want to be pitched on what you guys do, which is like one of the worst things that you can do, because that's like going to a clinic and be like, I just want to see what you guys can do for me. It's like, well,
which I've heard that one before too.
Yeah. And it's so dumb. Like it's so counterproductive. If your car is messed up and you take it to a mechanic, you're just going to look at the mechanic and be like, what can you do for my car? It's like, I don't know. What do you want it to, like, we need to kind of talk through it. So, why do you feel like this happens maybe so much in clinics where it's like maybe a husband-wife situation, two partners, where one just seems to have a clear picture that wants help, willing to submit, wanting to receive coaching in the best way and actually follow through, and the other one just has an attitude, and you're like what's going on here?
Yeah. I don't think it's anything special for healthcare itself. You know, when we look at a lot of entrepreneurs, very, you know, it takes a special person to open a practice and run it themselves. But ultimately, it's a lot of personalities who tend to be very dominant, very high driven. But that also lends itself to starting a business, taking risks. But then it doesn't lend itself so much to say, all right, where do I actually need to improve upon myself? And then those individuals, they also have major communication challenges. So even when you're starting, you know, we just talked about this a lot recently of starting a business with your significant other. Like last week's episode from a few weeks back, it's also understanding, all right, what kind of relationship do we actually need to have? Because I think people just say, well, it's my wife or it's my husband. So of course we're going to communicate at a high level, and of course we're going to be on the same page, and they make assumptions. And then you find out, man, you guys aren't even talking to each other. You know, and it's not just this conversation we had. There's, you know, a clinic back east that I worked with, and it was the same thing. It's like, well, one's not talking to the other. And then the ultimate effect was on the company and the employees. So I think the biggest thing really, first and foremost, is just, are you guys actually aligned and on the same page with what you want and then what you need? And that's usually, you know, to the description you gave, it's that one person who's, hey, we both want growth, but we're going to do it this way. It's by getting some help to get things more streamlined and organized. And then the other person says, well, we're going to grow, but I want to do it my way and just have all the control because I don't trust anybody. So that for me is honestly the biggest thing, dude, is just getting partners, whether you're married or not, is actually getting on the same page and understanding, you know, what do we want to do for the company? How are we going to go about doing it? And then if we're struggling, what does even struggling look like? And what does success for us look like? Is it us working 60, 70 hours a week and being burned out? Or, you know, just because the top line revenue looks great? Or is it we have more free time, we have more time to spend with the kids, et cetera, et cetera?
What, from your perspective, do you think a clinic can succeed, like truly succeed, if you have one partner that's just almost with their head in their sand, in the sand, and then the other one is screaming for help?
Yeah. So again, I think that's everybody's definition of success is what does it look like, right? So you can, at least for me, and you know, it's not about finances. I mean, that's obviously a huge part. I mean, I love money. I think everybody who's opening a business wants to make revenue, but it's what are you starting the business for? And to your point, can you be successful? They can be. And that's, I think, where people get tripped up, which is we've done it this way for the longest time, and look how much money we're making, or look how much we've grown. Versus, all right, we have been successful, but how much more successful could we be if we got on the same page with each other? If we communicated, if we were able to give each other feedback and hold each other, you know, accountable and responsible. That's where I think a lot of people fall short is, well, Antonio, what's the problem, dude? We're making $1.5 million and we're on track for $2.5 million this year. So clearly whatever we're doing is working. And then you're looking at a situation saying you could have been making $2 million for the last 5 years and doubling your revenue to $5 million this year. So how many millions of dollars did you lose out because you're not aligned with your business partner?
So we talked about the mindset that someone needs to have going into getting help.
Yep.
Just improving their business. They've exhausted all resources. Whatever feels like they've did it. Whether it's like maybe 2 strategies when we talked a little bit earlier, but maybe it took them 6 months to just research a ton of different strategies and try one, maybe try the second. And so let's just say they passed that test, that they're coachable, they're humble, they're ready to learn. And then if they have a partner that they're both on the same page, they're both optimistic.
Yep.
And so when you pass that test, then and only then, if going into 2026 and someone wants to grow their clinic, grow their healthcare facility, then what's next?
Yeah. So let's just call it really simplified. You got your leadership down pat, because that's everything you just described there. That is a high level leadership right there going on. When we talk about the biggest issues in healthcare, internally, not externally as it relates to the insurance issues and things like that, it's definitely what kind of systems do you have set up to make your clinic thrive. And that's where it sounds very simplistic. And I was like, all right, you got to get your systems in place. But really, most organizations have none. They just piecemeal it, or they just do the old, well, we'll get to it later on. Let's just focus right now, which is important, but let's just focus right now on getting patients through the door, and then we'll figure out that other stuff, when I have the time or we're making more money. And then that's the biggest mistake people make, is that if you're growing a business, when the hell do you really have the time to A, now implement the systems, and then B, it's just so much freaking harder, right? Like you've worked with so many businesses, like, damn, bro, this would have been way easier if we started this from day one instead of you're in year 4 now. So it's being able to understand not just systems, because again, it's very simplistic approach, but mapping out every system or process in your company as it relates to patient care. What are we doing with employees? Those are the things that I see the big, it takes me 15 minutes to get a patient for me to get on the phone with a patient. It takes 4 weeks to get them in the office. They got to go through hoops, and I got to call them 4 times. It's like, what are you doing to make everything just easier? Because ultimately, what a lot of healthcare organizations don't really think about much is that you're a brand, just like every other business. And just because you have a doctorate or you're an MD, people don't care about titles. They want to know, are you going to fix my problem? And is this going to be an somewhat easy process for me to get the outcome? You
mentioned leadership a little bit earlier. When you look at team structure, why does leadership mindset matter more than, let's just say, an org chart?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously organizational chart is important, right? It's like who do we go to for solutions to our problems? But if you're not actually establishing yourself as a real great leader, then organizational chart doesn't matter, right? Because, I mean, there's plenty of businesses that have, hey, we know who we're going to, but the question is, do employees even want to go to that person? Right? It's like having that team captain in sports who's out, partying till 3 a.m. at the club the night before a game versus the person who's not the captain is in the film room studying and preparing. So people know who to go to. And that's why organizational charts, they're important, but it's not going to tell you really much outside of, who's got the title versus who's the person that actually is going to lead us and take charge when crap hits the fan. So
yes, I have just to kind of add on to that. So let's just look at it kind of both ways. If you had a really great organizational chart, like there was no stone left unturned, everything was perfect, everyone knows everything, and let's just say the leadership mindset is really poor, do you really think that people are going to follow the org structure? It's like not really. You can have how many times do we see like businesses where they have some things in place, but the leadership is very sloppy, and people just don't follow it. But on the flip side, let's just say your org chart is like non-existent. Let's just say you don't have that, and I feel like if you have a really good leadership mindset where people are taking ownership of their own tasks, people are communicating, people are making sure that their responsibilities are being met and they have like the gusto behind it. Maybe there's not a whole, there's a, not a org chart in place, but if someone kind of has that, communication is usually a lot higher. So if you start with that or you develop that and then you put in an organizational chart, it just makes things a lot easier because now people have the mindset to actually follow it.
Yeah. I'll give you like a really quick example. Like that actually happened to me, which was an employee actually says to me, why should I go to this person who's technically the director when they don't do shit? And then the director is asking me, hey, how come nobody comes to me for, like, because you don't take any action. You say you're going to do stuff and then you do nothing. So why would somebody keep coming to you for problem solving when they know you're not actually going to do anything? Or the person who says to me, why should I go to the chief operating officer when they the same thing. They don't do shit. We're running circles around this person and I'm supposed to report to them. So to your point, the title is one thing, but your actions are what's going to drive it.
So to kind of carry on that, there's, there is the titles, the responsibilities of the titles, but it's the observable actions of the person that's going to be like, all right, well, you're actually carrying out what you're supposed to be doing. And that builds a lot of trust. So what's one part of a software stack that falls apart instantly if the owner isn't ready to operate like a real CEO? So kind of unpack that question a little bit. I'll just say it again. What's one part of the software stack that falls apart instantly if the owner isn't ready to operate like a real CEO?
I mean, in reality, if we're talking software and healthcare, those are things that are supposed to help, but typically don't, right? So when we're looking at what's your electronic health records, which talk to anybody in medicine, they all hate it. They're like, it's supposed to make my life easier, but it's made it more difficult. Ultimately, I think the best way I would answer that is just basically putting anything in place. It's also knowing, what do we actually have to do to make things better in our organization? And now you focus a lot on that. Like, what's the what? So what do we need? And then why do we need to actually implement this? And how do we go about doing that? That's where a lot of people just get tripped up, is not focusing on the bells and whistles, the software that's $20,000 a month, whereas we need there's something similar that is $5,000. So it's this aspect of investing money based on real results, not emotion. That's a huge one. And ultimately, with any software or technology, it's just, is this helping us make things better?
Yeah. So just another thing on top of that. So when we look at like what's one part of a software stack that falls apart if the owner isn't going to operate it like a CEO. So part of what a CEO does alongside a COO is to make sure that operations are running smoothly, that there's no hiccups in the chain. And so when you're putting in like a software stack, a thing that falls apart is if there's a lack of training for adopting the software stack. And so if a CEO isn't overseeing that everything is running smoothly, then what ends up happening is that these kind of connection points between different systems, between that software stack, falls through the cracks. And what ends up happening is like, patients, clients, prospects, there could be some strong communication gaps between us to them, but then also between the team on like who does what in which handoff procedure. And if a CEO is not doing that, then that's where the software really crumbles apart because there's no cohesion there. So it kind of is a good segue into maybe KPIs, because key performance indicators with KPIs, really to us mean nothing if the leadership isn't prepared to make decisions off of that data. What do you think kind of holds back business owners when we establish a KPI with them? You're supposed to be monitoring this. This is why you should be monitoring this. But they get the data, but then they don't do anything with it. Why do you think that happens in some places?
I think I honestly just believe that a lot of people don't know. I think really two things. Number one is they don't know how to actually hold other people accountable. Yeah. Meaning, right? So if they see the data I'm saying this as they see the data and they know what the data is telling them, right? Yeah. So maybe it's all right. Our patient retention is terrible. So now I need to have a conversation with my team around why, what are the struggles, what are the challenges. And I think, so especially something like for myself anyway, it's hard for a lot of people to actually do that in a way that doesn't sound like you're accusing them of just being terrible at what they're doing, right? So a lot of people sit down like, hey, why is our patient retention so crappy? All right, well, you said it in a way, now they're like, all right, well, how do I answer that? Because now I'm going to get defensive. Like, well, and then they hear excuses, and then that actually, for a lot of owners, they just get more pissed off because it's like, you're not even taking responsibility. So no one's had to actually deliver feedback and hold your team accountable for what you've already established. But then the other aspect too is also knowing, does the team actually know what the KPIs are, right? And that's it. So ownership has established it. Like these are the numbers we're going to track. Does everybody else know that? Because then if they're not aware of it, how can they actually really focus on it? So that's I think a big one is just getting everybody on the same page. And then the third one would be they don't even know what the numbers are telling them. So and I forget who the hell said this, but I really appreciate what they're saying is the numbers tell a story. Like data tells a story as to what's going on. And I believe a lot of business owners, they just don't know what the pattern that they're seeing. They see the numbers and it's either good or bad, but they don't know exactly the underlying problem that's causing it. And therefore they can't really come up with correct solution.
Yeah. So a little bit earlier, we talked about the mindset someone needs to have, their partners. Also, just when there is a kind of coming together the minds of actually getting consulting, getting coaching, elevating the business, a big part of it is the mindset of being that CEO that you need to be, and then actually looking at like what your business is telling you, like what are the numbers actually telling you. And KPIs are like guardrails to help you accomplish. It's a means to an end. Yeah. It's to make sure that things are going in the right direction. And when KPIs, when it's like they mean nothing if you're not taking action on them, so you have to allow your numbers to coach you. If sales is dipping because the numbers are dipping and your KPI is set at a different standard, well, those numbers got to coach you on what to do next. And it sounds like it falls right back to communication. That if there's systems communication, there's communication with your staff, communicating strategies on how to get the best out of them to correct maybe poor behavior, things like that. So, but just to kind of continue on that is that the first thing we want to do going into 2026 is like, what are the numbers and what are they telling us? And also another question just for, clinic owners or business owners is what have I been monitoring? What do I need to monitor that's different? And what are maybe the top 10, top 7 KPIs that's actually going to drive me towards growth? So it's are perhaps like maybe there's numbers that they're not aware of that they should be locked in on. That's going to make a world of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, something real simplistic. Give you a good example would be maybe it's patient cancellation rate, which a lot of clinics actually don't track. Right? How many of our appointments are patients canceling and not coming in? But then they get the number, and then number one, is that good or bad? They don't even know. So what's in a good range to be in? But then to the point I was making earlier is, all right, I actually found out our patient cancellation rate is crap, but then they're not able to diagnose what is actually driving that, right? So then we're going to rely mostly on our employees, which I love employee feedback. It's just, maybe they know some things I don't. But then if you can't figure it out, all right, what's actually causing this? Is it the way we're talking to them? Are we, maybe speaking doctor speak? We're not being empathetic. We're not actually giving them a diagnosis. So there's some ways, there are the right tactics, right, to help identify what is driving this to be not so great. Because to your point, if you don't understand what numbers actually matter, you can grow as a company, but how much are you missing out on? That's one of the things that I hate, not claiming revenue. This is one of the things that a lot of business owners in healthcare talk about as it relates to insurance is I don't get paid for the work that I do. But then there's a lot of work that you guys do that has nothing to do with insurance that you don't get paid on because you're not actually tracking the data to see, are we actually doing a great job or not?
So there's a couple of parts here. One of them is, again, the mindset. It's the accountability. It's having those things drilled into, one's psyche. And then it's doing reports on the business as far as like, what are the numbers? What are the numbers that we haven't tracked that we should track? If we, you mentioned like patient retention rate. So I'll use that as an example. Like, what is it right now? Where would I love it to be? So if like your patient retention rate, like what's a poor number to you for patient retention rate?
Depends on the kind of office, but let's just say if it's a regular outpatient orthopedic, kind of center, realistically 15 to 20%.
15-20%. All right. So let's just go with 20%. And if we're trying to get that to, let's just say 1%, would you be like, all right, dude, like that's a big drastic jump? Would you say like that's a big jump?
Well, nobody's ever gonna get to 1%, but if they went from 20% to 15,
that's where I'm going.
Yeah,
that's where I'm going.
100%.
Yeah. So from 20 to 1, you would be like,
absolutely.
You're like, what kind of?
Yeah.
Well, 20% of 1%. Would you be like, that's like, that's the first strategy we should go after? Would you like pump the brakes? Like, look, let's just find ways to get it from 20 to 15 first, and then from like 15 to 10.
Yeah.
Like, and then 10 to maybe 8, and then ask ourselves the question is like, so what are we doing currently? What can we do to improve on this? Who's responsible for what? Why is this going to be important for the clinic? And it's basically doing that who, what, when, where, why, how, and what if, and work your way down and do it incrementally if you see it. Because if you're seeing an opportunity from like, instead of 20 to 15, but like 20 to like 8, because it's just blatantly there, then go after it.
Yeah.
So that's just like one example of naturally every single business owner is like, I want no cancellations. I want 100% patient rate. I want this. And you're like, okay, like that's a unicorn of a business that just does not exist, but we can get it close to there, but it's starting in increments.
Yeah. So there was this practice that had their cancellation rate was 27%, pretty bad, pretty damn bad. And that place was packed. And to your point though, it wasn't, all right, let's go in there and say, hey, what would happen if you got from 27 to 20 or 27 to 18? It was, what happened if you guys just go from 27 to 25? And then from 20, and 25 to 23. So to your point too, it's also a matter of, it's like basically setting goals, right? Everybody, I got to lose 100 pounds. Holy shit, it's a lot. Versus,
but that 100 pounds, but all right, let's lose 100 pounds in a month.
10? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but that's
like,
a lot of people focus on. It's like, oh my God, it's so insurmountable versus, all right, how do we just lose 10 pounds? So, and that's the same thing, with something like a retention rate. It's just, what do we more so have to do to actually get it down versus, all right, let's get it down to that 10%. Well, the actions are still going to be the same. So let's just focus on the progress that needs to happen to get there.
Yeah. So there's mindset component, there's this component, and then now you're going in, you're looking at the numbers of the clinic. What are some other things that facilities should look at to grow into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, and I know we spent some time on it, but definitely I do just want to reiterate, getting your systems down pat and understanding what systems, just like you said, what are the KPIs that are going to help drive us forward? What are the systems that we need to actually hunker down and build out first that are going to create the most momentum? But then when we look at just overall...
Can we have some examples of that? So like I'll just say like maybe a scheduling system.
You'd be surprised at how many organizations don't have a system or a process for their billing. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that they complain about the most.
So scheduling, billing systems, what are like maybe another top 3, top 4 where you're like, check if you're a clinic owner and you don't have these, like get them in place.
Yeah, I mean, really having the one that I really started figuring out a little bit later if you can go back in time and fix would be what's the actual treatment parameters look like. And what I mean by that is you never want to hire medical professionals or doctors and say, this is how you need to treat patients. Mm-hmm. You need to do it our way. Overall, the goal is, are we getting an outcome for patients? But then you have some doctors or medical professionals that a little bit more understanding of, all right, when do I need to change treatment plans? Mm-hmm. When do I need to order that diagnostic test? Versus the person who's going to say, well, let's just keep it going. Let's keep doing the same thing. So even having some treatment processes of understanding, all right, when do we need to deviate? When do you maybe need to consult with a colleague? Stuff that you would think are kind of basic, but again, we're all very, even in that leadership mindset, none of us want to admit, I'm not helping.
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple other ones too as well. So if you're a clinic owner, you should definitely have an employee feedback loop system. Get feedback from your employees. We talked about scheduling. Scheduling is really, really important. If your schedule is out of whack, then the clinic is out of whack. Your business is out of whack. If insurance is if you're cash, it might be a little bit different. Like the mechanism of payment is different, but it's payment nonetheless.
Yes, that's 100%.
So get a good system in place where you can track where every dollar is, how it flows, A cash conversion cycle system is a really, really good one. And also, I would say like find like what is your system for patient engagement? You know,
that's essentially what I was describing. So when you look at the scheduling and you're looking at how you're treating people, that essentially is boiling down to what kind of experience are you making it for them, for them to want to come back, for them to want to refer other people, and everything else you described, right? How do we get paid? I mean, that's essentially really how do we get paid for what we're doing?
Yeah.
And then they have no system for that.
Yeah. So those are a handful that in 2026 that we highly recommend. Is there any other ones that kind of?
No, I mean those are the most important ones. And to go back to your question, all right, what else would they do to grow it? Right, you do those things. That's 80% of what you need right there. The other aspect too, though, is also looking at how do we actually just bring in more revenue without having to slam the clinic with a crap ton more patients.
Yeah. So that's definitely one. But I'll say this: if you guys are hunkering down on those systems that we talked about, what's going to happen is naturally, do you think they're going to go backwards or they're probably going to grow?
They're going to grow.
They're going to grow. So have something in place where you're attracting talent to, because if you're going to grow, the next thing is like additional employees if need be, or virtual assistants. So something along those lines is like you want to have some kind of system in place for talent attraction and talent retention too as well.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really big one. If you could, Dan, send a blunt, no BS voice memo to every struggling clinic owner, like whatever that means to them. Maybe it's they're just working a lot. Maybe it's revenue struggling. Maybe it's like just within their staff, toxicity, whatever. If you could send a blunt, no BS voice memo to those struggling business owners, what would you say?
Oh man. Honestly, the biggest thing I'd really hunger on was just stop blaming other people and just take the responsibility of being an owner. That's the theme that I see a lot of people is they just, woe is me, or this is bullshit, what's happening to us. And it's true, but bitching and moaning about it isn't going to change the situation. So ultimately you're going to just continuously get what you're willing to tolerate. So whether it's, hey, we're not getting paid anything, or I have people that are quitting, it's, all right, have you created the right systems to limit those things? So it's, what are you going to do differently, whether it's ideally in 2026, but what are you going to do differently in 2026 to create a different result versus can we keep doing the same thing, but we're expecting something different to happen? So ultimately, it's the people that are willing to sit down and just see, I don't have the answers to everything, and that I need to get help from other people. That's the biggest shift that we need to start creating in healthcare is, number one, is this perfectionist mentality. And then number two is being able to get help, not just from somebody who's within your own industry. Because if we're a physical therapist, you typically want to speak to a physical therapist. Chiropractor goes to a chiropractor, so on and so forth. It's being able to sit down and say, how do I just get the best information from the best people, regardless of what kind of doctor or medical professional they are? Maybe it's somebody who's doesn't have a medical background, but they're phenomenal at business. So it's being able to check your ego, be confident in yourself, but understand I need some help because whatever I'm doing, it's not working to the degree that I want it to work.
Man, I would love to leave a blunt, no BS voice memo. To like if I had a blunt BS like just voice memo to clinics, it would just be like you're not as good as you think you are. You are very resistant to getting help. There's no reason for you to be in this chaos that you are. And if you just put your ego to the side, which might be hard for you as a doctor, but if you put that to the side, then you can experience a life and a business that is beyond your wildest dreams, but you're in your own damn way. So once you get that handled, then and only then are you going to experience growth. Yeah. Until then, hey man, good luck. I think private equity is going to gobble you up and destroy the patient outcomes in your community that you work so hard to build. Have a great day. Straight up, dude.
I mean, that is the future. Right? That's the future. We've had people on, what was that? Healthcare,
with
extinction.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Heading towards extinction. Yeah, it's like you said, more people are getting bought out by private equity or large healthcare systems. Less medical professionals are opening their own practices. So ultimately, what does this lead to? It's shit patient care, and it's you guys just working for other institutions. So the other aspect too from the voicemail would also be to dial back in on why the hell did you actually open why'd you start a business to begin with? And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they forget why the hell they even started the journey. And they're so lost in the weeds of it and just the bullshit that they tell themselves that they can't even see, what do I need to actually do to get to where I want to be?
Yep. So let's leave them with, what is one truth about growing a clinic in 2026 that owners just resist the most? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's the thing that they resist the most, but if they accept it, everything changes?
I think that what they resist actually is that they have no control. That really is the biggest thing, is that I have no control over this. I'm just kind of floating along, hoping that something magically changes. And, whether it's, because to your point, we can give you tactics, here's how to increase more revenue. A lot of people could do that, but if you're still screwed up in the head, or your thought process is wrong, and you're not factoring the fact that I own this business and I can do things to help it, then all that other shit doesn't matter. And every business, every discovery call that we've been on where the person's not in the right mentality, you're like, damn, dude, if you could just get your head on straight and clear out all the bullshit, have that humility that you talked about, oh my God, growth could be so easy and it would be so less chaotic. And I think the one thing I would probably want to leave you guys off with is just understanding, what does the end game look like? And what does the end point look like? What's the thing that we're going after? What's the result, the outcome? What do I want? You mentioned the word success early in the episode. Is what does success actually look like for me? Is it working 90 hours a week, being burned out and having no life and not seeing my family? I don't think anybody would really say that. So it's understanding, what does it look like for me, and what the hell do I need to do differently to get there if I'm not there now?
Thanks so much for watching the episode. If you saw this, it resonated with you, and you want help, just book a call with us. There's a link around here, and we'll see you there.